There's a moment when you realize that everything you've been taught about reality might be backwards. You've been told that the world shapes you, that circumstances determine your emotions, that you're simply responding to what happens around you. But what if I told you that the membrane of your perception is where reality actually begins? What if the very cells in your body are listening to every belief you hold, every emotion you feel, and literally reshaping themselves according to the story you're telling yourself about who you are? Dr. Bruce Lipton spent decades studying cellular biology before he discovered something that changed everything. He found that our beliefs don't just influence how we think about our lives, they influence the actual biology of our cells. This isn't metaphor. This is epigenetics. This is measurable, observable science showing us that the environment your cells experience isn't primarily the external world around you, but the internal world of your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs. Your cells are constantly eavesdropping on your inner dialogue, and they're responding accordingly. But here's what most people miss. 95% of your life is being run by subconscious programs that you didn't even choose. These are patterns you inherited, absorbed, downloaded from your family, your culture, your past experiences. You think you're making conscious choices, but your subconscious mind is like a tape player running the same old songs on repeat, and your external reality is simply dancing to that familiar music. Until you change the music, the dance remains the same. Gregg Braden takes this understanding even deeper. He shows us that we exist within a unified field, a web of connection that responds not to our thoughts alone, but to the coherence between our heart and our mind. When your emotions align with your intentions, when what you feel matches what you desire, you create a signal that this field recognizes and responds to. But when there's incongruence, when you want one thing but feel another, you're sending mixed signals into the very fabric of reality itself. Think of your internal state like a thermostat. Your external reality will always try to match the temperature you're set to internally. If your emotional thermostat is set to struggle, to lack, to pain, then no matter how much your circumstances improve temporarily, they'll eventually return to match that internal setting. The house might get warmer for a while, but it will cool back down to match the thermostat. Until you change the setting on the inside, the external temperature will keep returning to what feels familiar, even if what feels familiar is what you say you don't want. Every transformation that becomes visible in your life begins with something invisible shifting in your frequency. It begins with recognizing that the reality you're experiencing isn't happening to you, it's happening through you. It's being generated by the intersection of your conscious desires and your unconscious programming, and until these two forces learn to work together instead of against each other, you'll keep creating more of what you've always created, wondering why your life feels like it's stuck on repeat. Your desire might be sabotaging itself, and you don't even know it. When you want something desperately, when you need it to happen, when you can't stop thinking about how much better your life would be if only this one thing would change, you're actually broadcasting the energy of lack. You're telling the universe, through every fiber of your being, that you don't have what you want. And the universe, in its perfect responsiveness, keeps giving you more experiences that match that vibration of not having. This is the cruel irony of unconscious manifestation. The stronger your desire feels, the stronger the underlying emotion that's driving it. And if that underlying emotion is desperation, fear, or unworthiness, then that's what gets amplified in your reality. You think you're focusing on what you want, but energetically, you're focused on the absence of it. You're like someone standing in front of a mirror, angry that they look angry, not realizing that the only way to change what they see is to change their own expression first. The heart of this paradox lies in what neuroscientists call emotional memory. Your body remembers every time you wanted something and didn't get it. Your nervous system has been trained to associate desire with disappointment, hope with heartbreak. So when you desire something new, your body reflexively braces for the familiar pain of not receiving it. This bracing, this unconscious preparation for disappointment, becomes the very energy that pushes away what you're trying to attract. But there's something deeper happening here that most people never recognize. When you're constantly focused on what you don't have, you're living in a future that doesn't exist yet, which means you're not present to the life that's actually happening right now. And presence, this moment, right here, is the only place where creation actually occurs. The future you're so desperate to reach can only be built from the foundation of this present moment, but if you're never truly here, you're never truly creating. The way out of this cycle isn't to stop desiring. It's to desire from a place of wholeness instead of lack, to want from a place of overflow instead of emptiness. It's to learn the difference between healthy anticipation and desperate attachment, between excited expectation and anxious need. When you can hold your desires lightly, like a bird that you're happy to see but don't need to cage, they become invitations instead of demands, possibilities instead of requirements. You've been taught that if you just visualize hard enough, if you create vision boards and imagine your dream life vividly enough, reality will bend to match your mental pictures. But visualization without emotional alignment is like trying to plant seeds in concrete. You can have the most detailed, colorful image in your mind, but if your emotional body is still vibrating at the frequency of your old story, those visualizations will never take root in your actual experience. Here's what happens in most people's visualization practice. They use their imagination to escape from their current reality instead of using it to reprogram their internal reality. They close their eyes and picture themselves in their dream house, but when they open their eyes and see their current living situation, they feel disappointed. They imagine themselves in a loving relationship, but when they return to their single life, they feel lonely. The visualization becomes a form of emotional bypassing, a way to avoid feeling what's actually present in their body right now. Your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what you're visualizing and what you're feeling. If you're visualizing abundance but feeling lack, your subconscious registers the feeling, not the image. If you're imagining love but experiencing loneliness, your body responds to the loneliness. Your cellular memory, your nervous system, your hormonal responses, they're all responding to your emotional state, not your mental pictures. This is why people can visualize for years without seeing any real change in their external circumstances. The deeper issue is that most visualization techniques try to overlay new images on top of old emotional patterns without addressing the root programming that's creating those patterns in the first place. It's like trying to change the station on a radio without changing the frequency you're tuned to. The new pictures might be beautiful, but they're not broadcasting on the same wavelength as your emotional body. True visualization isn't about creating elaborate mental movies of your future. It's about feeling into the emotional essence of what you desire and allowing that feeling to reorganize your present moment experience. It's about becoming so familiar with the energy of what you want that your body starts to recognize it as home, starts to expect it as normal, starts to magnetize it through the coherence between your heart and your mind. When visualization becomes a practice of internal alignment rather than external projection, that's when it becomes a tool for actual transformation instead of just sophisticated daydreaming. There's a kind of positivity that's actually a prison in disguise. It's the smile you wear to cover your pain, the affirmations you repeat to drown out your doubts, the relentless focus on the bright side that keeps you from seeing what's really happening in the shadows of your psyche. This isn't authentic optimism, it's spiritual anesthesia, and it's keeping you stuck in patterns that your conscious mind refuses to acknowledge. When you use positive thinking as a way to avoid negative feelings, you're not transforming your vibration, you're just covering it up with a prettier frequency. But the original frequency is still playing underneath, still broadcasting to the field, still creating experiences that match its resonance. It's like putting a band-aid over an infected wound and wondering why it's not healing. The infection doesn't go away just because you can't see it anymore. Your negative emotions aren't obstacles to overcome, they're messengers carrying information about what needs to heal inside you. When you bypass them with forced positivity, you're essentially hanging up on the universe when it's trying to tell you something important about your internal state. These emotions are showing you where your unconscious programming is still running, where your old wounds are still bleeding, where your unhealed parts are still creating your reality from behind the scenes. The most insidious part of this pattern is that it feels virtuous. It feels like you're doing the right thing by staying positive, by looking for the silver lining, by refusing to dwell on what's wrong. But what you're actually doing is maintaining the very separation between your conscious desires and your unconscious reality that keeps you stuck in repetitive patterns. You're keeping yourself at a surface level where real transformation can't occur. True positivity isn't about avoiding negative emotions. It's about developing the capacity to be present with all of your emotions while choosing how to respond to them. It's about learning to feel your pain without becoming it, to acknowledge your fear without being controlled by it, to honor your anger without being consumed by it. When you can be with what is while still holding vision for what could be, that's when you develop the emotional authenticity that allows real change to occur. That's when your positivity becomes a force for transformation instead of a force for denial. Your body is keeping score of every unhealed wound, every unprocessed emotion, every unresolved trauma, and it's broadcasting that information into your reality every single day. What you're living isn't just happening to you. It's happening because of the emotional information that's still stored in your cells, still playing like background music in your nervous system, still shaping your perception of what's possible for your life. Cellular memory isn't just a metaphor, it's measurable biology. Every cell in your body contains receptor sites for neuropeptides, the chemical messengers of emotion. When you feel anger, fear, sadness, or shame, your cells literally bathe in the chemistry of those emotions. Over time, your cells become addicted to these familiar chemical cocktails, and they start to crave the very emotions that keep you stuck in patterns that don't serve you. This is why you can consciously want to change your life but find yourself unconsciously recreating the same situations over and over again. Your cells are more comfortable with familiar suffering than they are with unfamiliar joy. Your nervous system has been trained to recognize certain emotional states as home, even if home doesn't feel good. So when you try to create something different, your body rebels, creating symptoms, situations, and self-sabotage that pull you back into the emotional territory that feels familiar. But here's what most people don't understand. Your cellular memory isn't just storing your personal history, it's storing generational patterns, cultural conditioning, and collective wounds that have been passed down through your lineage. You're not just healing your own emotional patterns when you do this work. You're healing patterns that may have been running in your family for generations. You're breaking cycles that extend far beyond your individual experience. The beautiful thing about cellular memory is that it's not permanent. Just as your cells learned to store traumatic information, they can learn to store healing information. Just as they became addicted to the chemistry of old emotions, they can become addicted to the chemistry of new emotions. When you consistently practice feeling states that are aligned with what you want to create, you literally reprogram your cellular memory, changing the background frequency that your body broadcasts into the field of possibility. Your external reality begins to shift because the internal reality that's creating it has fundamentally changed. The very thing you're trying to avoid is the thing that keeps showing up in your life, and the harder you try to avoid it, the more persistent it becomes. This isn't bad luck or cosmic punishment. It's the perfect intelligence of a universe that's trying to show you something about your internal landscape that you haven't been willing to see. What you resist doesn't just persist, it amplifies because resistance itself is a form of focus, a form of energy that feeds the very thing you're trying to escape. Think about it. When you're afraid of being rejected, you become hypervigilant about rejection, scanning every interaction for signs that it might be coming. This hypervigilance changes how you show up in relationships. You become defensive, guarded, preemptively protective. And ironically, this defensive energy often creates the very rejection you were trying to avoid. People sense your walls before they even know why they're there. The same pattern plays out with money, health, love, success, every area where you have unconscious resistance. If you're afraid of being poor, you make financial decisions from a place of fear rather than wisdom. If you're terrified of being alone, you cling to relationships that don't serve you rather than learning to be complete within yourself. If you're desperate to be seen as successful, you exhaust yourself trying to prove your worth instead of simply being valuable. But resistance isn't just about what you're consciously trying to avoid. Often, you're unconsciously resisting the very things you say you want most. You want love but resist vulnerability. You want success but resist visibility. You want freedom but resist responsibility. You want change but resist uncertainty. These internal contradictions create static in your energetic signal, confusion in your manifestation, mixed results in your reality. The way through resistance isn't to push harder against it, it's to get curious about what it's protecting you from feeling. Every resistance is covering a wound that hasn't been healed, a part of you that hasn't been loved, a fear that hasn't been faced with compassion. When you can turn toward your resistance with tenderness instead of force, when you can ask it what it's trying to tell you instead of demanding that it go away, it begins to soften, to release, to transform from an obstacle into an ally in your growth. Pain isn't your enemy, it's your teacher, and it's trying to show you exactly where your power has been leaking away. But most people experience pain at only one level. The story level, where they get caught up in analyzing what happened, who did what, and why life is unfair. This level of processing keeps you stuck in victim consciousness, replaying the same narratives without accessing the deeper transformation that's waiting beneath the surface story. The first layer of healing is the story layer, acknowledging what happened, feeling the emotions that were suppressed, giving voice to the experience that was silenced. This is important work, but it's not enough. If you stay here, you become addicted to your trauma, identified with your wounds, defined by what was done to you rather than empowered by what you can do with the energy that's been locked up in these experiences. The second layer is the somatic layer, feeling the way the pain lives in your body, noticing where you hold tension, where you contract, where you armor yourself against feeling too much. This is where you start to discharge the energy that's been frozen in your nervous system, where you learn to be present with sensation without needing to escape it or fix it. This is where your body learns that it's safe to feel, safe to be alive, safe to be vulnerable. The third layer is the energetic layer, recognizing that every wound carries a gift, every breakdown creates space for a breakthrough, every place you've been broken is a place where light can enter. This isn't about bypassing your pain with spiritual platitudes. This is about allowing your pain to crack you open so wide that you discover the unbreakable essence that lives beneath all your breakable parts. When you work with pain at all three layers, something alchemical happens. The energy that was locked up in protecting yourself from feeling becomes available for creating what you want to feel. The intensity that was trapped in resistance becomes intensity that's available for manifestation. The sensitivity that made you vulnerable to being hurt becomes sensitivity that makes you available to receiving love. Your wounds become your wisdom, your scars become your strength, your pain becomes your power to create something beautiful from something broken. You say you trust divine timing, but what you really mean is that you're afraid to take responsibility for the timing of your own life. You use divine timing as an excuse to stay passive, to avoid making difficult decisions, to postpone taking action until some external force gives you permission to move forward. But divine timing isn't something that happens to you. It's something that happens through you when you align your human will with universal flow. The universe isn't withholding your good until some arbitrary future moment when you've suffered enough or learned enough or grown enough to deserve it. The universe is responding to your energetic signature right now, in this moment, based on what you're broadcasting through your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and actions. If you're broadcasting readiness, you'll receive opportunities. If you're broadcasting resistance, you'll receive delays. If you're broadcasting confusion, you'll receive mixed signals. Most people who are waiting for divine timing are actually waiting for their anxiety to give them permission to want what they want. They're waiting to feel certain before they act, secure before they risk, guaranteed before they leap. But certainty isn't a prerequisite for aligned action. It's a result of aligned action. You don't get certainty first and then move forward. You move forward with uncertainty and discover your certainty along the way. True divine timing is the marriage between your inner knowing and your outer action. It's the willingness to act when your soul says yes, even when your mind has 1,000 reasons to wait. It's the courage to trust your impulses when they're aligned with your heart, even when they don't make logical sense. It's the understanding that divine timing isn't about waiting for perfect conditions. It's about becoming the perfect conditions for what wants to emerge through you. When you stop using divine timing as a spiritual excuse for fear-based inaction and start using it as a compass for soul-aligned movement, everything changes. You become a co-creator with the universe instead of a passive recipient of its whims. You start to recognize that divine timing is always now. The question isn't when you should act, but whether you're willing to act from alignment rather than from anxiety, from trust rather than from control, from love rather than from fear. Your emotions are speaking to you in a language that most people never learn to understand, and because you can't interpret what they're trying to communicate, You keep getting the same message delivered through your external circumstances over and over again. Every recurring pattern in your life, every situation that keeps showing up no matter how many times you try to avoid it, is an emotion that hasn't been heard, honored, or integrated. Anger that hasn't been expressed doesn't just disappear. It goes underground and starts creating situations that give you something to be angry about. Sadness that hasn't been felt doesn't just heal itself. It starts attracting losses and disappointments that justify the sadness you were already carrying. Fear that hasn't been faced doesn't just fade away. It starts manifesting the very scenarios you're afraid of so that your external reality matches your internal reality. But here's what most people miss. These emotions aren't trying to make your life difficult. They're trying to get your attention because they're carrying information that you need for your growth and healing. Your anger is showing you where your boundaries have been violated. Your sadness is showing you what you've lost and need to grieve. Your fear is showing you what you care about so much that the thought of losing it terrifies you. When you learn to listen to your emotions instead of just reacting to them, when you learn to feel them instead of just thinking about them, when you learn to honor them instead of just avoiding them, they stop needing to speak so loudly through your external circumstances. They stop creating drama in your relationships, chaos in your finances, problems in your health, obstacles in your career. The key is learning to feel your emotions without becoming them, to let them move through you without being moved by them, to honor their message without being hijacked by their intensity. When you can be present with your emotional experience without being possessed by it, you develop emotional intelligence instead of emotional reactivity. You become someone who feels deeply without being overwhelmed, someone who can navigate the full spectrum of human emotion without losing yourself in any particular feeling. She had been trying to change her life for 27 years, and nothing seemed to work. She'd tried therapy, meditation, manifestation techniques, energy healing, spiritual practices, everything except the one thing that would actually create lasting change. She had never been willing to feel the terror that lived beneath all her efforts to improve herself, the terror that she was fundamentally flawed, unlovable, and destined to fail no matter how hard she tried. For 27 years, she had been trying to fix herself instead of accepting herself, trying to become someone else instead of discovering who she actually was beneath all her protective strategies. She had been using self-improvement as a form of self-rejection, trying to upgrade her life while rejecting the parts of herself that didn't meet her standards. Every technique she tried was contaminated with the underlying belief that she wasn't good enough as she was. The breakthrough came not when she learned a new technique, but when she finally stopped trying to escape from herself and started getting curious about the parts of herself she'd been rejecting. She started to feel the terror she'd been avoiding, the rage she'd been suppressing, the grief she'd been postponing. She started to love the parts of herself that she'd been trying to fix, heal, and change. And something miraculous happened when she stopped trying to change herself and started accepting herself. She naturally began to change. Not from effort but from ease. Not from force but from flow. Not from trying to become someone else, but from allowing who she really was to emerge. Her external circumstances began to shift without her pushing them, as if the universe had been waiting for her to stop fighting herself so it could start supporting her. The real transformation wasn't in her circumstances, it was in her relationship with herself. She learned that self-love isn't a feeling you have to generate, it's what remains when you stop generating self-rejection. She learned that self-acceptance isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming present with your imperfection. She learned that healing isn't about fixing what's wrong with you, it's about remembering what's right with you that you forgot was there. Your heart isn't just a pump, it's the most powerful electromagnetic generator in your body, creating a field that extends several feet beyond your physical form and influences everything and everyone around you. This field carries information about your emotional state, your level of coherence, your capacity for love, and it's constantly broadcasting this information into the quantum field that responds by organizing reality to match your heart's signature. Joe Dispenza's research shows us that when your heart and mind are in coherence, when what you're thinking aligns with what you're feeling, you create a measurable electromagnetic signal that can influence matter at the quantum level. But when your heart and mind are in conflict, when you want one thing but feel another, you create energetic chaos that disrupts your ability to manifest coherently. Most people are trying to create from their minds alone, using willpower and positive thinking to override their emotional reality. But the mind's electromagnetic field is relatively weak compared to the heart's. When your mind says one thing and your heart feels another, your heart wins every time. Your reality will always reflect your heart's true feeling rather than your mind's hopeful thinking. This is why people can repeat affirmations for years without seeing change, can visualize their dreams every day without manifesting them, can think positively while continuing to create negatively. They're trying to create from the mind while the heart is broadcasting a completely different signal. It's like trying to tune into a radio station while someone else is holding the dial. You'll never get clear reception. But when you learn to generate coherent emotions, when you feel gratitude, appreciation, love, joy, or compassion from your heart rather than just thinking about these states from your mind, you create a powerful electromagnetic signature that the field recognizes and responds to. You become a clear signal rather than static, a focused intention rather than scattered energy. Your reality begins to organize around the coherence of your heart rather than the confusion of your contradictions. The reality you're experiencing right now is nothing more than the external translation of your internal frequency. Every circumstance, every relationship, every opportunity, every obstacle, they're all just the universe reflecting back to you the energetic signature that you're broadcasting from the depths of your being. Your external world is simply the subtitle of your internal movie, the visible manifestation of invisible patterns that have been running in your subconscious mind. Bruce Lipton's research proves what mystics have known for centuries. When you change your perception, you change the biochemical signals that your cells receive, and when you change those signals, you change your entire biological experience of reality. You're not a victim of your genetics, your circumstances, or your past. You're the author of your cellular environment, the director of your biological responses, the creator of your lived experience. Neville Goddard understood that imagination, when combined with feeling, doesn't just create mental pictures. It creates actual changes in the fabric of time and space. When you imagine something with the feeling of it being real, when you feel as if your desire has already been fulfilled, you create a new vibrational template that reality begins to conform to. You're not just daydreaming about the future, you're actively participating in its creation. Think of yourself as an architect working with invisible blueprints. Your thoughts are the design, your emotions are the materials, your beliefs are the foundation, and your actions are the construction crew. Most people are trying to build a new house while standing on an old foundation, using materials that don't match their design, with a construction crew that's following blueprints from a previous project. The transformation you're seeking doesn't require more effort, it requires more alignment. It requires learning to feel in harmony with what you want to create, to believe in accordance with what you want to experience, to act in congruence with who you want to become. When all these elements are working together instead of against each other, creation becomes effortless because you're no longer fighting yourself. Every moment offers you a choice. You can continue broadcasting the same old frequency and receiving the same old reality, or you can take responsibility for your vibrational signature and begin consciously creating the life that's been waiting for you to become energetically available to receive it. The power has always been yours. The question is whether you're finally ready to use it.